you find that a look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. It's time for us to take a look at the top stories or the major stories on the front pages of our newspapers this morning. And we'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper as always. The lead story on Daily Trust today: 7 weeks after Tinubu's visit, Nigeria UAE row lingers. You have Nigerians in UAE cry out over work permit, visa ban. FG working to resolve issue, says official. Decry slow pace in resolving diplomatic row on page 4. And then above the lead story: impeachment plot. PDP governors meet today to save Rivers governor. On page 11, you have also 90 million Nigerians lack access to electricity on page 19. Other stories: 20 feared dead in Cross River, Benue communities boundary dispute. You'll find that story on page 25. And then FEC approves 2.18 trillion naira, a 2023 supplementary budget on page 4. Unstable exchange rate forces imports down by 65% in the third quarter on page 20. Taraba boat accident, 17 bodies recovered, 12 rescued. You also have Tinubu Atiku continue feud after Supreme Court verdict. Judgment mandate bandit robbery, says ex-VP. And your inordinate ambition doomed, says Presidency on page 6. Well, these are the main stories on the front page of Daily Trust today.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Sun this morning. The major story says Rivers boils as the governor faces impeachment. State Assembly begins process to remove Governor Fubara from office. Majority leader sacked. Emerges a factional speaker. Suspected thugs set the Assembly complex on fire. And nobody will remove me. I am ready to die. That's according to Fubara. You find all the stories on page 6 of the newspaper. Supreme Court, we are not deterred by verdict, says PDP. Financial autonomy, pass and shuts assembly complexes nationwide. The federal government threatens to revoke DISCO's, GENCO's licenses. And horror in Abia cattle market as Governor Oti reveals discovery of 50 bodies and 20 decomposed skulls in the market. Where FEC approves for 2.7 trillion naira supplementary budget for 2023. Anxiety as Kano conjoined babies head for Saudi Arabia for surgical separation. Also below the pictorial of Atiku's press conference, it says affirmation of Tinubu's election, ex-VP Atiku blows hot on Supreme Court's verdict, accuses Apex Court of legitimizing illegality, forgery, identity theft, perjury. Vows to continue struggle to deepen and save democracy, and time for you to quit. That's a reply from the presidency. At the bottom there, it says protest rocks Jos over conflicting judgments as governor calls for calm. These are some of the stories on Daily Sun this morning.
All right, now let's take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. You have the lead story there, talks about the Rivers crisis. It says Wike Fubara rift festers as move to impeach governor fails. The following riders: suspended House leader emerges speaker, adjourns sitting. Police shot at me, they wanted to kill me, says Fubara, the governor. Governor sacks chief judge, chief of staff, other Wike loyalists, and PDP governors set to intervene, summon emergency meeting. Wike plans to remove Fubara, install speaker as governor, says Clark. You also have other stories there. Presidential election, Supreme Court judgment erodes trust in electoral system. Democracy, says Atiku. You also have another story. Boko Haram may wipe Nigeria off the map, says Governor Zulum. Other stories, Ohaneze Mons constitutional lawyer Mwabweze. These are the main stories on Daily Independent this morning.
Licenses of 17 discos GenCos due for renewal and revocation on November 1st. That's the major story of the Guardian newspaper this morning. We have crisis in Rivers as Assembly splits and gets 2 speakers, moves to impeach Fubara. UBA records 115% growth and PBT rises by 263% to 502.1 billion naira. The price of rice increases by 60.59% in 1 year as transport fares rise by 117.29%. FEC proposes 2.2 trillion naira supplementary budget for road repairs and palliatives. I am not going away, says Atiku, as Tinubu's aide knocks gloomy submission on democracy. Moral burden of using tainted celebrities as brand ambassadors and influencers. We have Abia uncovers 50 decomposing body and 20 headless bodies in cattle market. A very sad one there. Now, these are some of the stories that you would find on the Guardian newspaper today.
All right. So these are the main stories. Let's get some more perspectives. We have in the studio Dr. Theophilus Abba, the director of Daily Trust Foundation, for some perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us as always.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So perhaps I'll give you a minute, or two, to also give your reaction to the drama in River State before we go on to other issues on the papers today.
Well, I think the drama in River State, tells us an old story. And the story is that, you see, when you install anyone and you think you install anyone as governor, let me use the word install now, even though it was a democratic process. If you work for anyone to become governor and you think that you control him, it's going to be, it will lead to frustration. Because this is not the first time this is happening. Wike was the one that single-handedly, worked for Fubara to become a governor of River State. But now it's like he's not giving him the free hand, and he's saying, look, I'm the governor, I have the executive powers. I have to do what I should do as governor. And that is the consequence of what's happening. I'm quite unfortunate because even if you assisted anyone to become governor, you must allow him to do his job as governor. Right. Wike was there for 8 years as governor. I don't think anybody remote controlled him. So you should allow Fabura to do his job as governor.
Okay. All right.
This idea of
well, that's at the risk of losing his own relevance in the state, which I'm sure that's what he's trying to protect. So
yeah, it's like everyone is
when you talk about relevance, allowing him to do his job does not mean that you may not be relevant. But it is only when you kind of make it difficult for him to do his job that you now say, okay, let me have my own structure in the state.
But do you think doing his job is him sacking the chief judge and other people that have, political jobs there? We see the chief of staff and other Wiki loyalists. Let's remove the Wiki loyalists. Does he have any good reason for, removing these people?
No, the details we don't know. You understand? But if he was being impeached, you understand? You know that the chief judge is the one that will constitute the panel that will do the impeachment. The speaker will be one of those that will lead the impeachment process. And he's using his executive power. I'm not saying that is the right thing to do. This is like fighting in the mud. It's a battle that is not helping our democracy. Because if somebody is teleguiding what is being done in the state, and making it difficult for someone who has been elected now, in quote, to do his job, that is why you have this kind of crisis. But
Okay, let's move away from that before we now dwell on it, because we had that discussion earlier on the program. Another issue creating some buzz in the news is the reaction of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar to the Supreme Court verdict that affirmed President Bola Tinubu's victory in the 2023 general elections. A lot of statements were made by the former vice president. In fact, he said, in his words, that when the public lose confidence on the electoral process, then democracy is on life support, in his own words. So what do you make of some of the things that, what are the takeaways for you from the speech yesterday?
Well, what I know is that, you see, when the Supreme Court makes a pronouncement, we believe that is the final, that is the last bus stop. And so we have to live with what the Supreme Court says. We just have to live with what the Supreme Court says. And I'm thinking that it's not appropriate to castigate the Supreme Court to say, oh, they involved in political banditry. There are some words to use. I don't think that is good.
So he said also...
I don't think that is good for
he also said things along the line of, the Supreme Court judgment is akin to legitimizing illegality, forgery of certificate, perjury, and the rest of them.
Actually, a lot of people could think the way he thinks, but the court was very clear that, look, you cannot obtain any judgment or any document from any other part of the world and impose it on Nigeria. It has to follow Nigeria's own legal process. So the Supreme Court did not say this document was not forged. It didn't say this document was forged. But it said we cannot take a position on it because this is from another jurisdiction. You can't impose it on our own. The Supreme Court said that. I'm thinking that, you see, what has happened is to help us improve on our political process. Now, if INEC had done its due diligence, candidates submitted documents to you, you need to verify. If the DSS had done their own due diligence, some of these things will not arise. Because when there is this kind of suspicion that this document that is submitted to INEC may not be, genuine. For instance,
in fact, these are some of the recommendations that the former vice president is making. He made, I think, about 5 recommendations. One of them, he said that we should mandate, that we should review the Electoral Act to mandate electronic transmission of results, which I believe would now involve the use of the IREF and the rest of them. And he also talked about making sure that we conclude on electoral petitions before inaugurations are done, which is a call that has been also echoed by many other people, talking about a rotational presidency of 6th term, should be considered in our constitutional amendment. And also, INEC must be made to verify credentials of candidates in elections.
Because it's not only the case of President Tinubu, there are several other cases. Somebody is sworn in as governor and the issue of his certificate will still be pending. INEC should have a department, I don't know whether I could call it department, a section that should verify, the documents that candidates submit. I know some institutions, if you need a job there, you apply for a job, you submit your documents, they will go back to your university, go back to WAEC and find out, is this guy's certificate genuine, And another thing I would advocate, in order to hasten, I don't know whether, in order not to slow the process, is to say, look, if it is presidential election, let the whole evidence go to the Supreme Court. So that we don't have the presidential tribunal, taking 120 days or thereabout, then they do whatever they want to do before you go to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court is like the final court, why can't we take all these things to the Supreme Court? It is done in other parts of the world. Because this delay, has made it in such a manner that we now have to inaugurate a president who is still fighting for his position even in the court of law. So I'm also advocating that it will be okay for us to say for presidential election, let the Supreme Court handle it. So that even if the Supreme Court sit for 60 days, they look at the evidence for 60 days, 100 days, we now know that we have the final outcome of
all right. Let's talk about what the presidency are saying in reply to what Atiku's press conference, how it panned out. The presidency are saying that Atiku should rest. And Atiku is saying, I am here to stay. Do you think, Atiku being here would actually help in putting the government in check? Because at some point, we do need people who can actually criticize the shortcomings of the government.
I don't think Atiku going to rest means anything. Because, he's a Nigerian. and he has the right to participate.
He said he's not going anywhere.
Yes, he has the right to participate in elections. You know, if you go to the US, the Biden, who is going to run for another term, is quite old. You understand? So you cannot say Atiku is too old to run for an election. You can't ask him to stop. Because what he's doing, going to court, is even helping our own judicial process. Some of the things that have happened in 2023 election will ensure that they are not repeated in 2027. You know, so if he didn't challenge the outcome of the polls the way he has done, some of the lessons that we are learning now will not learn. You understand? So I'm feeling that the opposition, I know, is quite important for any democracy, because if there's no opposition, then the government in power will not even know where it is done, whatever when it goes wrong. The importance of the opposition is to say, look, Mr. Ruling Party, this is what you are doing, this is not right. These are the alternative viewpoints. And we're expecting that now, you know, the PDP, the Labour Party, and other parties, or minor parties that contested the last election, should constitute a very strong opposition. You know, we want, apart from saying, okay, I must be giving a presidential mandate, we want you to be able to give us alternative, you know, ideas, alternative viewpoints on economic issues, social issues, political issues. It's not a matter of just being there as president or governor. But we need a very vibrant opposition.
Yes, but can we really say that we are learning lessons from the 2023 elections if we don't see some of these electoral and judicial reforms that are being advocated in the aftermath of the election? Like from taking away from the VP's statement yesterday as well, the former VP's statement yesterday, Atiku Abubakar, he also talked about the need for judicial reform. So he said there's need to see more transparency in the appointment of judges. He also is calling for, you know, public annual evaluation of the performance of judges, you know, in this sense. So he is also re-echoing some of the statements that were made by Justice Datijo earlier, who, you know, pointed to some weaknesses and loopholes in our judicial processes and the corruption in the judiciary, as a matter of fact.
Actually, all those things he's talking about, I think they are relevant. Now, there's one slogan that is not good for Nigeria, that is go to court. So it gives the impression that if you can do anything, manipulate your way to get anything for yourself, you just go do it. Let the opponent go to court. Because at the judiciary, at the court of law, nothing will change, you know, and it's not good for the country. It's not good for the democracy. It's not good for the judiciary. If anybody will say, okay, I've rigged the election, I've done what I want to do, I've got what I want. If you are not happy, go to court. And then if you go to court, the judgment will look somehow. You know, they keep telling us that, oh, the law is different from public opinion. But if the law departs from public opinion so widely, people will be saying, oh, what are these? Is this law meant for us, or it is meant to satisfy the interests of some persons? Because the law, to me, has to follow a measure of common sense. You know, judgment must follow a measure of common sense. Even though you say, well, it is the law, but if the judgment, if the outcome of a case, you know, departs from what we call common sense, you know, it shows that, look, something may have gone wrong. And that's why people are, I say, look, there has to be reform in the judiciary. You can't see what is apparently wrong and see, oh, because of technicalities, it's right. There's nothing we can do about it. You know, I think technicality should be secondary. I don't know.
So this technicality, something must have given rise to it, isn't it? Do you think that these loopholes in our, you know, either electoral law or in the Constitution are part of the, you know, impediments that we're experiencing as regards this issue of technicalities that we hear lawyers always throw up?
No, I think technicality has to do with maybe the procedures and the interpretation of the law. You understand? If, for instance, like there is an aspect of the Electoral Act, you know, which gave room for the Presidential Tribunal to say, well, INEC has the right to do what it had done. He said, look, this INEC can transmit election results, can conduct election using so and so, and any other, you know, and any other means that considered. Now, if you say and any other means considered, you see, it's vague. You understand? And it's an open-ended powers. So if you say, well, any other means, the INEC can now do whatever it wants to do. And then the next thing is, well, it's INEC. There's nothing you can do about it.
So,
they have done what they are supposed to do.
So the Constitution needs to be amended?
Well, me, I've advocated that there has to be amendment to the Constitution, especially the way the Constitution is worded. Now, the issue of "and," in a section of the Constitution, that to say whether FCT, whether it must have 25% in the FCT before you win the presidential election, was a contentious issue. But that section of the Constitution was not well worded. Because if you say "and," it becomes compulsory. You understand? But if you use another, any other, lexical item, maybe it's a prepositional phrase, then it will not be compulsory. If you say "with or without," win 25% in 24 states with or without the FCT, then the FCT will not be seen as compulsory. But if you say "and," it means that FCT is, you must win 25% FCT. That is what it means. And so there are so many things like that in the Constitution, even in the act setting up various agencies of government that need to be amended. Because the people who framed the law may have something in mind, but then by the time you go to interpret the law, and that is what lawyers, use, going to technicalities, they say, oh, what does this word mean? Does it mean that? What does it imply? Then you now begin to say, okay, in law, how does it apply? In this case, how should it apply? And then when lawyers argue, the judge will say, well, I cite this one, and then that's the end of it. So we need to look at the law critically. Because if technicalities will override, the substantive issues, then it is wrong. Then we also told that, for you to win an election, you must have complied substantially with the law, with the Electoral Act. So what is substantially? And
also there is the argument that if your evidence that you are presenting in court does not substantially impact or affect the outcome of the election,
who defines that was substantially
considered?
So if you now say, okay, if there is an election in 200 wards and there's evidence that there was fraud in 120 wards, then the election can be annulled. You understand? Then it's clear. But the word substantial is an abstract word, and it is interpreted by whosoever is interpreting it. If you say, okay, we have 774 local governments, if you detect that there's fraud in 500, then the election can be cancelled. You understand? It's clear. What's the percentage that makes substantial? It's only the guys who sit on the case that decide. And that is not right.
There's still a lot to talk about. But quickly and briefly, Doctor, let's talk about the statement of Governor Zulum, the governor of Borno State, who everyone know at least that he's one of the best active governor tackling insecurity in his state. And he said Boko Haram may wipe Nigeria off the map. What is your take on that heavy statement that he put out?
Well, I don't know. That statement, when I read that statement, I was wondering because right now, I think Boko Haram. We are told that Boko Haram has been contained, but now attention is focused on the bandits. And the way it is, I was thinking that this new government will have a new approach to fighting the terrorists. But if you say wiping Nigeria off the map, it means that Boko Haram is becoming stronger than we thought. Because we are thinking that after Buhari's regime, to some extent, some of them claim to have repented. There were measures to reintegrate them to the society. And we understand that part of the Sambisa forest have been reclaimed and mainly leaving them to be operating around the Lake Chad. So if you say that they could wipe Nigeria, I don't know whether that is hyperbolic, because I am thinking that we've done a lot to suppress it. So we need to know what is the strength of Boko Haram today. There has to be a study of what's the strength and what do we do to deal with it. I think that is one of the things that we need to, because when Zulu made that statement, I was shocked because recently he said, no, Boko Haram was not controlling any part of Borno. And I remember him saying that if 2 or 3 weeks after he's talking about Boko Haram having the capacity to wipe Nigeria off the map, then we need to know what exactly is the status of Boko Haram activities, especially in the northeast. Because right now, I think the challenge is the bandits who are mainly in the northwest and the north central, mainly in the northwest, north central, but not Boko Haram. So maybe he's saying, oh, don't forget the fight against Boko Haram. Because we have seen the army do a lot of good work, as far as I'm concerned, fighting bandits. They go after them, they pursue them to wherever they are hiding. You know, they don't wait for them to attack before, they get them. They, arresting their commanders, killing some of them, free people. We keep hearing this story on a daily basis. And maybe he's saying that, oh, you are facing bandits, you are forgetting the fight against this terrorists. Maybe that is what he's saying. But then to say, you wipe out Nigeria from the map. I think it's very hyperbolic.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Theophilus Abba, the Program Director of Daily Trust Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A very insightful conversation.
Thank you.